My brother stole my inherited business and demoted me to janitor, until my secret partner showed up. The air in the boardroom of Vanguard Logistics felt like ice, even though it was July. I walked in with my iPad, ready to discuss the new shipping routes. I had built this company from a 3-truck garage into a global empire over 30 years. My brother, Roman, was already there, sitting in my leather CEO chair. He didn't stand up. He didn't even look at me with respect. Instead, he slid a thick stack of legal papers across the polished mahogany table. "The board has voted, Agnes," he said, his voice sounding like a snake sliding through dry grass. "They think you are too old and incompetent. I am the sole owner now. I signed the final papers this morning." I felt like the world was spinning. My own brother was stealing my life's work right in front of me. I couldn't breathe. I looked at the documents, my heart hammering against my ribs. "This is impossible, Roman. I own 60% of the shares," I whispered. He just smirked, a cruel look I had never seen before. Then, he reached under the table and pulled something out. He tossed a heavy set of blue polyester coveralls and a rusty mop at my feet. The metal bucket clattered against my expensive shoes. "You always told the press you weren't afraid to start from the bottom, to build a legacy," Roman laughed, leaning back in my chair. "Congratulations, Agnes. You're the new night shift janitor. Start with the toilets on the 10th floor. They're a mess." If you want to see how I make him pay for this insult, hit subscribe right now for the rest of the story. I stood there, frozen in shock. I grabbed the document with trembling fingers. At the bottom of the page was my signature, slanted and perfectly formed. But I knew the truth. I had never seen this paper in my life, let alone signed it. I looked at Roman, my eyes burning with tears of rage. "I didn't sign this, Roman. This is a lie," I shouted. He leaned across the desk, his face inches from mine. "I've been practicing your handwriting for months, big sister. Every loop, every dot. It's perfect. Try to sue me if you want. I've already paid off the notary and the witnesses." He snapped his fingers, and 2 security guards entered the room. They were men I had hired and trained myself. They didn't look me in the eye as they grabbed my arms to escort me away. The guards didn't take me to the lobby. They dragged me toward the service elevator and pushed me down into the basement. The locker room was nothing more than a damp, windowless corner of the warehouse near the humming boilers. It smelled of bleach and old dust. I was forced to take off my tailored silk suit, the one I wore to meet presidents and kings, and put on the rough, itchy polyester of a janitor's uniform. I looked in the cracked mirror on the wall. A plastic name tag was pinned to my chest. It read, "Agnes, Maintenance." I felt a sob rise in my throat, but I pushed it down. I wouldn't let him hear me cry. My phone was the final thing they took, claiming it was company property. I was totally cut off. I sat on a wooden crate, staring at the floor. My mind raced back to 5 years ago, to our father's deathbed. He had clutched my hand with his frail fingers. "Agnes, you have the heart for this business. You know how to care for the people," he had coughed. Then he looked at Roman, who was standing in the shadows of the hospital room. "Roman has the hunger, but he has no soul. Promise me you'll protect the legacy, Agnes. Don't let him burn it down." I remembered Roman's face in that moment. It was twisted in a look of pure, murderous envy. I realized now that he had been planning this coup since the very second our father took his last breath. He didn't want the business. He wanted to destroy me. The first night was a nightmare. My task was to clean the executive suite, which meant entering my own old office. The room smelled of expensive cigars and spilled whiskey. Roman was there, leaning against my desk, laughing with Elena. Elena was my younger ex-fiancée's sister, but more importantly, she had been my closest friend and advisor. Now, she was draped over my brother. I watched as she took a sip of champagne and spilled some on the rug on purpose. "Oh, look, the help is here," she sneered, pointing at the wet spot. She looked at me with total disgust, as if I were a stray dog. "I only associate with CEOs, Agnes. This floor is filthy. Scrub harder, you missed a spot." I gripped the mop handle so hard my knuckles turned white. I was invisible to them. As I knelt on the floor, my mind drifted back to only a month ago. I had taken Elena to my penthouse for a private dinner. We were celebrating a massive shipping contract I had just secured. I felt we were a true power couple in the industry, sharing secrets and dreams for the future of Vanguard. I thought she loved me like a sister. Now, as I scrubbed the floor at her feet, I noticed the glint of a sapphire necklace around her neck. It was the same one I had bought for her as a thank you gift for her loyalty. She whispered something into Roman's ear, and they both burst into laughter. It wasn't just a coup. It was a setup. She had been Roman's spy in my home all along, feeding him my secrets. By the third night, my back ached and my hands were blistered. While I was emptying Roman's confidential shredder bin, I noticed something strange. The machine had jammed, leaving several long strips of paper only partially destroyed. I carefully pulled them out and laid them on a cleaning rag. As I pieced the scraps together, my blood ran cold. It was a draft of a secret contract with a rival company called Ironclad Logistics. Ironclad was run by a man named Silas, our father's greatest enemy and a known criminal. Roman wasn't just stealing the company from me, he was planning a hostile takeover. He was going to sell our family's legacy to the very people our father had fought his whole life to keep away. I had to act fast. I knew I needed a weapon, and I knew exactly where to find one. Years ago, when I was a teenager helping my father build a warehouse, I had installed the very first server room myself. I knew every wire and every hidden corner of this building. At 3 a.m., when the security guards were busy drinking coffee in the break room, I snuck into the back of the server room. I moved a heavy rack of spare tires and felt for the loose floorboard I had installed decades ago as a secret time capsule. My heart leaped when my fingers caught the edge of the wood. I pulled it up, and there it was, wrapped in plastic, an encrypted laptop and a burner phone I had hidden as a backup for emergencies. I powered up the laptop, the blue light reflecting in my tired eyes. An encrypted message box immediately popped up on the screen. It was a secure line I hadn't touched in years. I typed in my old code name, Vanguard 1. Seconds later, a reply blinked back, status report, Vanguard 1? We have been waiting. I felt a surge of power return to my veins. I typed back, the vulture has landed. Initiate phase 0. You see, for 2 years, I had suspected Roman was up to no good. I had quietly been running a shadow company on the side. This shadow company didn't just have money, it actually controlled every single piece of Vanguard's intellectual property and software patents. Roman had the building, but I had the brain. The next morning, the building was in total chaos. From the basement, I could hear Roman screaming at the top of his lungs. He was trying to close a massive deal with a global shipping giant, a contract worth billions. He stood in the boardroom, surrounded by wealthy investors, trying to demonstrate our new automated tracking tech. But every time he pressed a button, the software crashed. The screens turned bright red and froze. Roman turned bright purple, shaking his fists at the terrified engineers. The lead engineer, a man named Marcus whom I had mentored for a decade, just looked down at his shoes. I don't know what to tell you, sir, Marcus whispered softly. Only Agnes has the master encryption keys to the core logic. We can't fix a single line of code without her. Roman was desperate, so he summoned me to the boardroom. He didn't want to apologize, he wanted to win. I walked in carrying my mop and bucket, the smell of bleach following me. The investors looked at me with confusion, seeing an old woman in a janitor's suit in the middle of a high-tech meeting. Roman sneered at me, trying to look powerful in front of his guests. Fix the code, janitor, and I'll give you a $50 bonus, he barked, throwing a crumpled bill onto the table. I didn't reach for the money. Instead, I leaned on my mop and gave him a slow, pitying smile. I'm just a simple janitor, Roman. I don't know anything about complicated codes. Maybe you should check the trash? You seem to like things that are thrown away. After the meeting failed, Elena tried a different approach. She cornered me in the service elevator, her expensive perfume making me want to gag. She tried to look sympathetic, putting a hand on my rough sleeve. Agnes, darling, let's be reasonable, she purred. She tried to use the old spark of our friendship, whispering about how we could still be a power team if I just handed over the passwords. She promised she would leave Roman and help me get a better position if I gave her the keys to the mainframe. I leaned in close, smelling the greed on her breath. I pretended to consider it for a second. The password is RomanSucks69, I whispered into her ear. Try that. She ran off to tell him, not knowing I had just triggered a lockout timer. Roman was furious when the password didn't work. He didn't want to wait, so he hired a famous black hat hacker to break into my system. I watched on my secret laptop from the basement as the hacker tried to force his way past my firewalls. He was good, but I was better. He didn't realize that I had planted a logic bomb in the system years ago for this exact reason. As soon as he touched the core files, every screen in the entire Vanguard building began to flicker and glitch. Instead of shipping data, the monitors began to display a slideshow of photos. They showed Roman's secret bank accounts and records of his illegal gambling debts. His face went white as the entire office staff started whispering and pointing at the screens. The situation turned even darker when the CEO of Ironclad, Silas, arrived to finalize the takeover. He was a ruthless man who looked like a vulture in a suit. He walked into the lobby, demanding to see the assets he was buying. Roman was sweating, his shirt stained with panic. He tried to act like he was in control, leading Silas toward the main server room where the company's digital vault was kept. "I have everything ready for you," Roman promised, his voice cracking. He swiped his stolen keycard and opened the heavy steel doors. But when the lights hummed on, the main monitor showed a giant zero. The vault was completely empty. All the liquid assets, the millions of dollars in reserve, had vanished into thin air overnight. Roman let out a scream of pure terror that echoed through the empty vault. He spun around, his eyes wild and bloodshot, looking for someone to blame.
"She stole it."
"The janitor stole the money," he shrieked, pointing his trembling finger toward the basement stairs. He grabbed his desk phone and dialed the emergency line, demanding that the police arrive immediately to arrest me for grand embezzlement. Silas, the CEO of Ironclad, just watched with a cold, disgusted look on his face. He didn't like doing business with losers. Within minutes, 3 police officers marched into the lobby, their heavy boots thumping on the marble floor. Roman ran to them, babbling about how his crazy sister had emptied the company accounts. He wanted to see me in handcuffs, but he didn't realize that I had already laid the trap perfectly. The officers didn't head for the basement to find me. Instead, they walked straight toward Roman, who was still shouting orders. "We aren't here for the janitor, Mr. Carter," the lead officer said, pulling out a folded piece of paper. "We have a federal warrant for your personal accounts and your arrest." My brother froze, his mouth hanging open like a fish out of water. I had set up a silent monitoring system months ago. Every time Roman used the company credit card to pay for his fancy cars, Elena's jewelry, or his private club memberships, the system flagged it as an unauthorized withdrawal. It went straight to a third-party auditor I had hired. He was facing 20 years for corporate theft. If you want to see if he escapes, hit subscribe now to follow my journey. Roman was terrified, but he was also a coward who knew how to use the last of his stolen influence. He managed to post bail by using a hidden emergency fund, the very last of the cash he had siphoned from the warehouse operations. He returned to the office late at night, his expensive suit wrinkled and his hair a mess. He looked like a man who had lost his mind. He found me in the lobby, calmly mopping the floor near the fountain. He didn't see the trap. He pulled a small, silver gun from his pocket and pointed it directly at my head. "Give me the master keys and the money, Agnes, or I end this right now," he growled. I didn't blink. I just kept mopping, knowing I wasn't alone. Before Roman could pull the trigger, a calm, feminine voice rang out from the dark shadows of the mezzanine.
"Put the toy away, Roman.
You're embarrassing yourself." A tall woman stepped into the light, wearing a sharp gray suit and a confident smile. It was Sarah, the daughter of Silas, the man Roman had tried to sell the company to. Roman stammers, his gun hand shaking violently.
"Sarah?
What are you doing here with this trash?" he asked, gesturing to my janitor uniform. Sarah walked down the stairs and stood right beside me, placing a supportive hand on my shoulder. "I'm not here for you, Roman," she said firmly. "I'm Agnes's 50-50 partner in her shadow firm. And since our merger went through this morning, we officially own Ironclad Logistics, too." Roman looked like he was going to faint as the truth finally hit him. Sarah explained everything with a cold, sharp logic. I hadn't just been cleaning floors, I had been using my shadow profits from the patents to slowly buy up the majority shares of our rival, Ironclad. While Roman was busy trying to sell my father's company to his enemy, I was busy buying the enemy's company out from under him. The merger Roman wanted so badly was actually happening, but I was the boss of both empires. Roman had handed me the perfect opportunity to double my power. He was now standing in a building that belonged entirely to me, Sarah, and the ghost of my father. The look of defeat on his face was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. The room was silent as the weight of my victory settled over us. I stood up straight, unzipping the blue polyester coveralls to reveal the tailored Italian suit I had hidden underneath. I wasn't the janitor anymore, I was the queen of the board. "Roman, you're fired," I said, my voice echoing with authority. "Security, please show the former CEO out of my building. Use the service elevator. It's more his speed." The guards, realizing who was really in charge now, stepped forward with grim faces. They grabbed Roman by his expensive silk lapels. He started screaming, his face turning a sickly shade of gray. As he was dragged toward the back of the building, the employees I had looked after for decades began to pour out of their offices. A slow clap started in the warehouse and grew into a thundering cheer that shook the walls. I stood in the center of the lobby, but I knew the battle wasn't fully over. Simply firing Roman wasn't enough to satisfy the fire in my heart. He still had the forged documents tucked away in a safe house, and he was the type of rat who would try to burn the whole city down just to keep a single crumb. My security team informed me that Roman had fled to a cheap motel on the edge of town. But then, a darker report came in. Roman was desperate and had used his last remaining connections to put out a hit. He had hired a professional to solve the Agnes problem once and for all. He wanted me dead so he could claim the original inheritance through a series of legal loopholes. The betrayal had turned from financial to blood. That evening, my private phone buzzed in my pocket. I answered it, expecting a threat. Instead, the voice on the other end was strangely familiar. It was Marcus, the lead engineer whom Roman had fired in a fit of rage earlier that week. "Agnes, it's me," Marcus said, his voice low and urgent.
Roman reached out.
"He offered me $1 million to fix you. He thinks because I'm out of work, I'll do anything. I told him I'd do the job for free just to get close to you." I felt a chill, but then I smiled. Marcus was loyal to the core. "Don't kill him, Marcus," I replied, staring out the window at the city lights. "I have something much worse in mind for my dear brother. Let him think he succeeded. We are going to play a very long game." The next morning, the local news was filled with a shocking headline. There had been a tragic accident at the shipyard during a late-night inspection. I had officially disappeared. We staged it perfectly, leaving behind a broken railing and my signature scarf floating in the dark, oily water. Roman, watching the news from his hiding spot, believed he had finally won. He emerged from the shadows, dressed in a new suit, and marched straight to our family lawyer's office to claim the entire estate as the sole surviving heir. He walked in with his head held high, ready to sign the papers that would make him a billionaire. The lawyer looked at him over his spectacles with a strange, sad expression. "There is one final video message from your sister," the lawyer said quietly. The big revenge was finally beginning. The lawyer pressed a button, and a large screen descended from the ceiling. My face appeared, looking calm and radiant. "If you're watching this, Roman, you think I'm dead," I said in the video, my voice chillingly steady. "You think you've outsmarted the sister who raised you. But you forgot the most important rule of logistics: always track your shipments." Roman leaned forward, his eyes narrowing in confusion. Suddenly, the video switched from my face to a live, high-definition feed. It showed a secret offshore warehouse, the one Roman used for his untracked goods and illegal smuggling. He didn't know that every crate in that building had been fitted with a GPS tracker and a tiny camera by my janitorial staff. His heart stopped as he realized what he was seeing. The video feed was crystal clear. Just as Roman's jaw dropped, dozens of black SUVs swerved into the frame, surrounding the warehouse. Uniformed FBI agents poured out like a flood, battering down the doors. In real time, Roman watched his entire illegal operation fall apart. The crates were cracked open to reveal stolen government property, medical supplies and high-tech sensors Roman had been trying to sell on the black market. He let out a strangled cry, his hands gripping the lawyer's desk until his knuckles popped. He turned to the lawyer, his eyes bugging out of his head. "This is a setup. You have to help me." Roman shrieked. The lawyer didn't say a word. Instead, he reached up and slowly peeled away a thin layer of professional prosthetics from his face. It wasn't the lawyer at all. It was me, Agnes, hiding in plain sight. Roman fell backward out of his chair, scrambling across the carpet like a terrified insect. I stood over him, peeling the rest of the mask away to reveal my cold, triumphant smile. "How does it feel to have your own name used against you, Roman?" I asked, my voice echoing in the small office. I revealed the final blow. I hadn't been Janitor Agnes for the last few days. I had been using my high-level access to act as Project Manager X at the very bank Roman used for his secret offshore accounts. While he was busy plotting my death, I was busy forging his signature on a series of crushing, high-interest loan agreements and confessions of debt. I had used his own favorite trick to bury him in a mountain of legal and financial ruin he could never escape. By the next afternoon, the government moved faster than a lightning strike. Every single asset Roman had ever touched was seized. His penthouse, his fleet of sports cars, his expensive watches, even the shoes on his feet were technically no longer his. He was left with literally nothing but a tattered shirt and a pair of jeans. The man who wanted to be a king was now standing on a street corner, shivering in the rain. He tried to call Elena, but her number had been disconnected. He tried to go to his private club, but the bouncers threw him into the gutter. He was forced to walk 3 miles to the only place that would take him, a crowded homeless shelter on the edge of the industrial district. He didn't know that I had bought that shelter that morning. I walked into the shelter an hour after Roman arrived. The room was loud and smelled of cheap soup and wet wool. Roman was sitting on a thin cot, staring at his dirty fingernails. I didn't say a word as I walked up to him and dropped a heavy, plastic bucket at his feet. Inside was a mop with a gray, frayed head. "The bathrooms in the back are a mess, Roman. They haven't been cleaned in weeks," I said, my voice as hard as flint. "If you want a bed tonight, you better start from the bottom. Just like you told me to do." Roman stood up, his face red with a final burst of rage. He tried to swing the mop at my head, but my guards, the same ones from the boardroom, tackled him instantly, pinning him to the floor. While Roman was scrubbing floors in the shelter, I turned my attention to Elena. She didn't get away either. I sued her for corporate espionage and international fraud, using the recordings from my janitor days as evidence. She lost her power couple status overnight. The sapphire necklace I had bought her was seized as part of the legal settlement. Without my money or Roman's stolen influence, she was a nobody. A month later, I visited the shipyard canteen to check on the staff. I saw a woman with messy hair and a stained apron serving greasy burgers to the dockworkers. It was Elena. She looked up and saw me, her eyes filling with shame. I didn't say anything. I just watched as she was forced to serve the very men she had once mocked. With the chaos settling, I returned to my father's old study to clear out the remaining files. Tucked behind a loose brick in the fireplace, I found a weathered envelope I had never seen before. It was the real final letter from our father, written just days before he passed. My hands shook as I read the words. It revealed a secret that changed everything. Roman was adopted. Our father had always known that Roman possessed a darkness in his heart and feared he would one day try to steal the legacy. "Agnes, if you are reading this, he has betrayed you," the letter said. It included a kill switch digital code for the entire company infrastructure, a final emergency measure that only a true heir could trigger. My father had protected me from beyond the grave, knowing I would be the one to save us. I didn't use the kill switch to destroy the company, I used it to rebuild. I officially merged Vanguard Logistics and Ironclad into a new, massive entity called Vanguard Global. By combining our technology with their fleet, I became the youngest female billionaire in the sector. The news of my resurrection and the merger sent the stock prices soaring. Sarah and I sat in the penthouse office, looking out at the city we now helped move. "We did it, Agnes," she said, raising a glass. I looked at her and realized our secret partnership had become something much more. I offered her a real wedding, this time, not for a mission or a business strategy, but for genuine love. We had built an empire on the ashes of betrayal, and it was finally time to live our lives. The legal system finally caught up with Roman. The evidence I provided from the warehouse raid and the bank fraud was undeniable. He was sentenced to 30 years in a high-security prison for treason and federal fraud. On the day he was processed, I made sure to use my influence one last time. I spoke with the warden and arranged for Roman's cellmate to be the very hacker he had tried to stiff on payment weeks earlier. That hacker was a man with a very long memory and a very short temper. As the heavy steel doors slammed shut behind my brother, I knew he would finally understand the true cost of his greed. He was locked in a cage with the consequences of his own choices, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely at peace. A week later, I visited my father's grave. The cemetery was quiet, the air fresh with the scent of cut grass. I knelt down and placed a polished gold CEO badge on the marble headstone. "Mission accomplished, Dad," I whispered. "The legacy is safe, and the people are taken care of." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that had been there for 30 years. But as I turned to leave, I saw a thin, bedraggled figure standing in the distance near the cemetery gates. It was Elena. She looked broken, her clothes worn and her face thin. She was watching me from afar, a look of pure regret in her eyes. She didn't approach, she just stood there like a ghost of the life I had left behind. I didn't feel anger anymore, just a cold, hollow pity. As I walked toward my car, Elena finally plucked up the courage to stumble forward. She fell to her knees in the dirt, begging for a second chance and a place back in the company. She cried about how she had been misled and how she still loved me. I looked down at her and realized I felt absolutely nothing. The woman who had been my best friend was gone, replaced by a desperate stranger. I reached into my pocket and handed her a small, white business card. It wasn't for a management position or a consultant role. It was for a local cleaning service that specialized in industrial warehouses. "They're hiring, Elena," I said, my voice as calm as the morning air. "Tell them the janitor sent you. It's a good place to start from the bottom." With the old ghosts finally put to rest, Sarah and I focused on the future. We transformed Vanguard Global into a leader for green energy, replacing our old diesel trucks with electric fleets. We became known as the saviors of the city for our work in cleaning up the harbor and providing thousands of high-paying jobs. I made sure every worker had a voice, remembering the nights I spent in the basement hearing their struggles. To finalize my revenge against the memory of Roman's greed, I set up a massive trust. An anonymous donor sent a $10 million check to the prison where Roman was held. He thought he was being bailed out until he read the fine print. The money was only payable to the Victims of Corporate Fraud Fund to help the families he had hurt. I wanted him to see the wealth he craved, helping everyone but him. Roman didn't take his defeat quietly. Even from behind bars, he tried to claw at my heels. He sent a letter through his lawyer, written on cheap, lined prison paper. "I'll get out one day, Agnes," it read. "I'll find a way to take back what is mine. You can't keep me in here forever." I didn't get angry, I simply went back to my desk. I picked up the phone and called the governor. I decided to use a portion of our new profits for a public safety project. I funded the construction of a brand new, maximum security medical wing at the prison, one with the most advanced locks and surveillance in the world. I sent Roman back a photo of the ribbon-cutting ceremony. The plaque on the wall officially named it the Roman Wing. He was finally famous, just like he wanted, but only as a permanent resident of his own namesake. 1 month later, I held my first official board meeting since the merger. I walked into the high-tech boardroom, the same place where Roman had once tossed a mop at my feet. But the people sitting around the table were different now. I didn't fill the seats with greedy investors or yes-men. I looked at the new board. Every single one of them was someone I had promoted directly from the warehouse floor or the engineering bays. These were people who knew the smell of the garage and the weight of the crates. I stood at the head of the table and made my first announcement. I officially appointed Marcus, the lead engineer who had stayed loyal to me, as the new chief operating officer. The room erupted in genuine applause. For the first time, Vanguard was run by people with souls, not just hunger. The anniversary of the coup arrived on a warm, quiet evening. Sarah and I stood on the balcony of our penthouse, looking out at the city lights and the glowing V logo on top of the Vanguard building. The intimacy between us was real, and the trust was absolute. We didn't have to hide anymore. As we watched the ships move in the harbor, my phone gave a soft ping. It was an official notification from the State Parole Board. Because of the new evidence I had uncovered regarding his smuggling rings, Roman had been denied parole for the 3rd time. He would be staying in the Roman wing for a very long time. I felt a deep sense of closure. I had not only survived the betrayal, but I had turned it into a foundation for something beautiful. Later that night, I went down to the warehouse alone. The building was quiet, the only sound being the distant hum of the servers. I walked over to the corner where the cleaning supplies were kept. I picked up a mop, feeling the rough wooden handle in my palms just for a moment to remember. I wasn't the victim anymore, and I wasn't just a CEO. I was a woman who had seen the bottom and used it to climb higher than ever before. My brother thought a title made a leader. He thought a suit made a man. But the view from the bottom is the only one that truly shows you the truth of a person's character. I set the mop back in its bucket and walked toward the light. The floors were clean, and the company had never been stronger. Thank you. Please like, share and subscribe for more. Also turn on your notification bell so you'll be the first to get our next shocking revenge story.